It's the European trial of the century. 6 young girls vanish without a trace, snatched from their families. They are raped, tortured, and locked in a cage.
It's unbelievable how someone can think that you can leave a human being, even two, in such a tiny place.
The crimes were so horrific, they sent the country of Belgium reeling into national mourning, which erupts into fury over revelations of how police bungled the investigation.
It was possible to save killing children, to save 4 children who are dead now.
Grieving families lead the nation in a fight to find the truth in the trial of Marc Dutroux. March 2004, the Court of Assize, Arlon, Belgium. 44-year-old Marc Dutroux arrives to stand trial. Today, the parents of the children he is accused of kidnapping, raping, torturing, and murdering see him face to face. Dutroux elicits loathing that verges on violence, so a specially built compartment shields him behind bulletproof glass. Over the next 16 weeks, the full horror of what happened to the 6 abducted girls will be revealed. For Paul Marchal, the father of 17-year-old Anne, some of the evidence is so gruesome, he collapses through distress.
I was on the trial every day, every hour I was there, during 4 months.
Julie Lejeune's father, Jean-Denis, now sits only meters away from the man accused of killing his daughter.
C'était difficile d'être là à côté et de devoir rester calme et impassible alors qu'on a beaucoup de haine, et de rancœur et un sentiment de vengeance aussi qui est omniprésent.
Dutroux's horrific crime spree starts in June 1995, when 8-year-olds Julie Lejeune and Melissa Rousseau vanish after spending the afternoon playing together. 2 months later, teenage friends Anne Marchal and Afia Lambrek disappear from a holiday resort. Frustrated by inadequate police response, Anne's distraught parents launch their own search for the girls.
I began to make a poster with disappeared Anne, Afia, there. Phone us, please, let us know something.
In just 2 months, 4 girls have gone missing. A year later, police still have no leads. Then 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne disappears on her way to school. 2 months later, 14-year-old Laetitia Deleuze also seems to vanish. But a witness spotted the battered old van used to abduct her.
Someone noted the number plate of the car, and he told it to the police. They started checking the combination in their listings, and they found the name of Marc Dutroux.
On August 13, 1996, police raid one of Dutroux's 7 rundown houses in the Charleroi region of Belgium. They arrest everyone there. 39-year-old unemployed electrician Marc Dutroux. His wife, 37-year-old Michelle Martin. and 25-year-old drug addict Michel Lelivre. 2 days later, after listening to a flurry of phone calls Dutroux received the night Laetitia went missing, police arrest 55-year-old businessman Michel Nihoul. After 48 hours of questioning, Dutroux breaks and leads police to his house in Marcinelle. In the basement, they find 2 young girls. They've been kept locked in a cage 1 meter wide, 2 meters long, and just over 1.5 meters high. They are 14-year-old Laetitia Deleuze and 12-year-old Sabine Dardenne. Laetitia had been in the cage for almost a week. Sabine had been there for nearly 3 months. The fact that 2 girls survived such an ordeal gives Paul Marchal hope he may yet find his daughter Anne alive. She's now been missing for a year.
We saw that Sabine had lived for more than 2 months in there, and so it was possible. And so I believed that we could find Anne and Eefje alive, and perhaps Julie and Melissa too.
But Paul's hopes are dashed when Dutroux leads police to the graves of other kidnapped girls. In the garden of his house in Salle-la-Buissière, police uncover the remains of Julie Lejeune and Melissa Rousseau. 30 kilometers away in his house in Jumet, buried beneath a shed, are Anne Marchal and Eefje Lambrecht.
At that moment, it was a sort of release that we found Anne and Eefje. Alive or dead, it helps that you can find them.
At the girls' funerals, the nation comes out to grieve.
It's not normal to lose a child. It's normal that you lose your father or your mother, because they are older and everyone must go someday, but not the child.
To many, it seems God has deserted his children.
Et toutes les prières, où sont-elles allées? Et toutes les bougies qu'on a fait brûler, ça a servi à quoi? Les réunions de prière, les pèlerinages, est-ce que le bon Dieu est sourd? Non, ce n'est pas blasphème que de crier ainsi.
In the weeks that follow the funerals, the public mood shifts. Profound grief turns to anger as it's revealed that police incompetence on a breathtaking scale is partly to blame for the terrible deaths of these 4 innocent girls.
Marc Dutroux était bien connu des services de l'ordre. Il faut savoir que déjà depuis 1981, année où il a connu sa femme Michel Martin, il pratiquait déjà de la sorte, c'est-à-dire enlèvement, viol d'enfants, viol de femmes, de jeunes filles. Et c'est Michel Martin qui filmait les viols de son mari.
Dutroux was released in 1987 after serving just 6 of his 13-year sentence for kidnapping and raping children. In fact, the police had placed him under surveillance 2 weeks after the disappearance of the first 2 girls, Julie and Melissa.
They put the camera in front of his house. They followed him during several weeks. And he incredible thing is that during this operation, he kidnapped 2 other girls on an Evia, but they didn't, for some strange reason, they didn't notice. Evia tried to escape. She was naked on the roof of the house at a certain moment. But the camera didn't pick up the image.
What's more, Dutroux' mother had sent a letter to police stating that 2 teenagers were being kept in a cage in her son's basement. And most incredible of all, officers raided Dutroux' Marcinelle house twice, specifically looking for the kidnapped girls. In a particularly cruel twist, while searching the cellar, officers heard girls' voices on the other side of the wall, but left without investigating further. Their final blunder was to confiscate homemade child pornography and videos in which Dutroux is actually filmed constructing the cage. They never watched the tapes.
Moi, j'ai difficile à croire ça. C'est pas possible qu'il y ait que des incompétents et que les incompétents ont travaillé dans notre affaire.
Most of the Belgian people agree with Jean-Denis. Rumors of a police cover-up start to circulate. They are reinforced when Marc Dutroux presents his defense. He claims he didn't act alone and is part of a paedophile network with high-level government connections.
A network is when several people together do a handle in abusing, violating children for money, for a lot of money. And I'm sure that it exists.
Now, an important new player enters the scene. Lead investigator, Judge Jean-Marc Conneron. He takes the paedophile network allegations seriously and launches a nationwide appeal for witnesses. But just when he starts to make progress, he's removed from the case. Dutroux' lawyers successfully claim he's biased in favor of the victims. But his firing fuels allegations of a cover-up.
When Conrad was taken out of this case, the Belgian people don't accept it.
In a mass demonstration known as the White March, over 300,000 people protest in the streets of Brussels, the Belgian capital.
There was anger, there was a lot of emotional feelings at that moment.
White symbolizes the innocence of children. The march is an outpouring of public anger and a gesture of support for the grieving families.
I got a lot of flowers. It was very heavy to carry them with me. And at that moment it was a feeling like I have Anne in my hands.
The following day, Paul visits Anne's grave and covers it with the flowers. He finds a note which gives him some comfort.
I put all these flowers on the grave of Anne, and I found a little paper. It was not signed, but there was someone who writes on this paper, Anne, yesterday, again I saw your father laughing. And that was the White March.
Despite the public outcry over the case, it's not until 2004, 7 years later, that Marc Dutroux is brought to trial. The 47-year-old is charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, rape and murder. His now ex-wife, 44-year-old Michel Martin, is charged with conspiracy, kidnapping and rape. Michel Lelièvre, 32, is charged with conspiracy, kidnapping and rape. 62-year-old businessman Michel Nioul is charged with kidnapping, drug dealing, human trafficking and conspiracy. The three co-defendants deny all charges. Dutroux admits to abduction and rape, but pleads not guilty to all murder charges. The court first hears the traumatic account of how 8-year-old friends Julie Lejeune and Melissa Rousseau were kidnapped and for 8 months kept in a cage in Dutroux' basement.
You couldn't stand up. It was like that big, that high. You wouldn't even put a dog in such a tiny place.
In November 1995, Marc Dutroux was sent to jail for car theft. The 2 imprisoned little girls were left in the hands of Dutroux' then wife, Michel Martin.
Marc Dutroux is in jail, and the kids are alone in that house, in this cage. And at that moment, as far as we know, he asks his wife, Michel Martin, to bring them food.
By the time Dutroux is released 4 months later, Julie and Melissa are starving to death, barely clinging to life.
As far as we know, when Marc Dutroux comes out of jail, the boat is still alive. But they die on the same day, and he buries them in Sarre-la-Buissière.
Michel Martin confesses that she brought food to the house for her dogs, but she didn't feed the children. The court has little time to recover from the sickening testimony before they hear the fate of Anne Marchel and Afia Lambrec. The 2 teenagers were kept in Dutroux' house in Marcinelle for about 10 days, where they were repeatedly raped. Then they were driven 30 kilometers to Jumet in the north of Charleroi.
They've been given medication to sleep, and then they've been buried. They have been buried alive. The explanation of Marc Dutroux was, after all, we discovered that they were too old for what we were looking for.
There is no let-up in the horror. Dutroux' surviving victims, Sabine Dardenne and Laetitia Deleuze, take the stand. Laetitia was locked in the cage for 6 days. She recounts how she was led up from the cellar, chained to a bed, and raped. Sabine was held captive for 80 days. Her testimony reveals how Dutroux tortured her psychologically as well as physically.
Sabine kept a diary. He made her believe that this was a case of money, that her family had to pay for her, but that the family didn't answer his letters, that nobody cared about her except he. Marc Dutroux also made her think that when he abused her, that it's some kind of payment she had to do. He put all the responsibility on this little girl.
12-year-old Sabine wrote letters to her family, which were read to the court. In them, she describes what she calls the room of agony, where Dutroux took pornographic photos and raped her. When cross-examined about the paedophile network, she says she was only ever abused by Marc Dutroux.
Sabine Dardenne has never seen anybody else except Marc Dutroux. So she's the biggest opponent of all these theories about pedophile rings. She says, I haven't seen anything of it, and there's nobody here who's been closer than her.
Before Sabine and Letitia can leave the trial behind, there is a final ordeal to overcome.
C'est moi qui ai demandé que la cour d'assises puisse aller visiter cette cache pour qu'on se rende compte du machiavélisme.
The victims' parents, as well as all the accused, make the journey to the house in Marcinelle. They see firsthand the room of agony. Downstairs, they enter the dungeon-like basement. It has never been heated, and it's cold and damp. This is the removable wall which hid the cage. Now off its hinges, the hollow space behind is accessible and brightly lit for the court. But the children imprisoned there shared one lamp. It would have been dark.
Il faut bien se rendre compte que c'est une ancienne citerne d'eau de pluie et que cette citerne a été vidée et que les petites étaient dedans et que cette citerne était séparée en deux par un grillage en plus. Je suis allé dans cette cache, je me suis assis et j'ai vu que Julie avait écrit son prénom avec un crayon noir sur le mur et voilà. Et j'aurais vraiment bien voulu pouvoir récupérer cette signature.
This is where Julie and Melissa starved to death. On the 14th of June, the jury start their deliberations. It takes 4 days for them to return a verdict.
Question numéro 11, oui.
Michelle Martin is found guilty on all counts. She is sentenced to 30 years in prison. Lelièvre is guilty on all counts as well. He gets 25 years. The jury can't come to a decision on the businessman Néoul. He is later acquitted of kidnapping by 1 vote, but found guilty of drug dealing, human trafficking, and conspiracy. He is sentenced to 5 years. Dutroux is found guilty on all counts of kidnapping, rape, conspiracy, and murder, and is sentenced to life in prison. He's to be kept at the government's disposition, which means they can choose never to release him. After the verdict, there is relief outside the courthouse. For Betty and Paul Marchal, it's been a long time coming.
After almost 9 years, but now I'm feeling better, much better.
For the 2 young women who survived Dutroux's dungeon, the verdict brings justice, but it cannot end their suffering.
Libérée d'un poids, je dirais pas ça parce que je vais quand même vivre avec encore des années.
I wouldn't say that it has lifted the weight off my shoulders, because I will have to live with the memory for many years to come. But at least I've been listened to. I was heard. And now I will get on with my life as before. It's done now.
But 7 years after the deaths of their daughters, Paul Marchal and Jean-Denis Lejeune are granted no closure.
La justice a été rendue pour Sabine Laetitia. Les éléments ont été vérifiés, exposés et avoués. Nous, on ne sait toujours rien du tout. Et la question est de savoir si un jour on saura.